What kind of measures and outcomes are you thinking about, Tria? Are you back pain at the end, or just accessibility up front, or?
Yeah, so the accessibility up front would be more related to that exploratory aim that we talked about. Let me go back in there and share the right screen so you don't see my mom texting me throughout this. But the exploratory aim, we would be looking at more the accessibility of it. But the outcomes that we've thought about more is related to, so there's standardized scale for low back pain disability, and also patients' perception of physical functioning, and then clinical outcomes of weight, BMI, and then well-being scales. That's what we've thought about so far, but I'm open to ideas on different things that we should look at.
So it seems to me those are all going to be intertwined too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is going to make, I'm a statistician, so my head always goes into, we've got to analyze it at some point, right?
Right.
So it all goes back to, it's all going to be multivariate related. So there's going to be interdependencies playing from at the start. So are you going to measure this at multiple points, or are you just going to measure it one time at the beginning, one time at the end? Or are you going to measure it every visit? You're going to measure it, like, how are you planning to measure it, I guess is where I'd start here.
We don't have that laid out yet.
Okay,
So we're open to ideas.
My first request is as early and often as possible. Like that,
Okay.
That would be the one thing I always tell people from like just a statistical point of view, as much
Okay.
data as often as possible, just
Okay.
because that opens you up to so many more options of what you can do with the data, right?
Yeah.
Like the kind of more data is always better, right? And just because you get a better view of it, and if somebody, you know, unenrolls or does whatever, you can kind of backfill a little bit with it.
Mm-hmm.
So again, from that perspective, I would tell you, just be upfront. Just every time you would get a patient touch point, you're measuring, you're trying to see what happens, just because it gives you just that little bit more. It gives you a little bit more power at every point. So that would be the one thing I would suggest there.
Okay.
Because of these interdependencies, you're going to be able to leverage that a little bit more and maybe find a little bit more power, which means you might be able to gain statistical significance someplace where you wouldn't be, where you may not otherwise, is the way I would phrase that.
Tria, your well-being measures, do those go into social determinants of health?
That some of them do. There's a couple well-being measures out there. I don't have their names right in front of me. But that would be of interest to us, because we're definitely wanting to look from the rural side. As you know, my interest is rural and obesity and opiate use disorders. So that would be, we would be looking for a measure that had that.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Are you using only telemedicine to collect the data, or are you using inpatient visits as well?
No, so our plan at this point is to plan on this being 100% telemedicine, this clinic. Part of that is because of wanting to recruit from throughout the state. Part of that is because both of us have found our fields to actually be doable from telemedicine. And so we're decreasing the patient drive time, and we're increasing their accessibility. You know, telemedicine allows somebody to log on before their visit and see us, whereas when they have to come to Morgantown, sometimes that's a full day round trip to see us. So right now, planning in telemedicine, but as long as we see good outcomes, we can go to our departments to see about doing more.
How are you going to account for differences in provider interaction with the individual person? The confounding fact is you're one person, the other person's another person. How are you going to address that confounder?
Are you meaning between me and Dr. Sedney, or me and Dr. Davison?
Well, all of the clinicians that might be involved in the care of the individual using telemedicine.
Yeah, I don't know. I figure we would keep track of who saw the patient and code that for sure. But is that answering the question that we would at least keep track of that?
I think you need to do more than just keep track.
Mary, are you thinking
don't-
about standardizing the series of interactions in each visit or something like that so that it's consistent across clinician?
Yeah, I think you need to think about that.
So our clinics are very standardized already because they're evidence-based. And we, both of us already do multidisciplinary clinics that are set up in a standard process. So we could definitely document what that process is. But I'm not sure.
Because one person might be a real charmer, like I might be a real charmer and get people to really do things, and another person might be less engaging, and get as good a result, I think. And maybe you can't totally account for that. I don't know. I'm just raising questions.
No, thank you. Yeah, at this point, the two physicians of the team would be myself and Dr. Sedney. And then we would be pulling in some nurse practitioners from each of our teams for sure. And from my side, of course, psychology and dietitian, which is part of our standard process. So
I don't know if this is similar to what Dr. Emmett just asked, but I was thinking about the patient recruitment side of it, because one of the more interesting things that you pointed out is how ineffective or how difficult it is for clinicians to talk to patients about the relationship between obesity and back pain. And so even at that point, could it influence will there be any training for recruitment? Because it seems like even at that point, it could influence who you get to come into the program.
That is something I'm meeting Dr. Sedney right after this to discuss this grant. So I am going to bring that up because that is a great question about training from the PCP side.
Right.
I like
which
that
sort of
idea.
adds a lot to your project, but in the long run, in a good way.
Yeah.
That's what I was going to ask about perception testing up front on what people think they need for their back pain, and if they see there's a relationship. And again, that could be a good leading question for the PCPs if you're going to train them, is to find out what their perceptions are to that too. So you can maybe see, people who really think there's an association do better than people who think it's just a surgical problem or anything like that. And it could be their PCPs on the referral. It could be the patients on their side too.
Yeah, part of me hopes that by putting the clinic together, a lot of times from my PCP part of my life, when that you're talking to somebody about weight loss, and then you do the classic eat better, exercise more, and there's not really somewhere great to send them or somewhere, and the same thing happens with back pain too. Back pain, well, exercise more and maybe physical therapy, and like trying to have that place that can be comprehensive for that treatment. I'm hoping that's a helpful thing. I'm sorry, I have a kid yelling in the background that they're screaming to each other on screens. I don't know. So if y'all can hear that, I'm really sorry. Any other thoughts on it? Because this has all been really helpful to take back to my team meeting.
You might have addressed this in the beginning, so I apologize if I didn't pick up on it. And I feel embarrassed asking this question because I'm a primary care clinician, but there's literature about weight loss helping reduce back pain, right? And it's solid.
Yeah.
I don't have any other suggestions, Terry, but I want to applaud you guys on tackling this because I think it's really important for our population.
Yeah, we
Mhm.
felt good about taking our expertise, and it's something that we think can really help our state. We're going to help our state in our two areas, but bringing it together could be, I think, good. So we're doing that clinically anyways, but hopefully we do research on it too.
Are you doing, you're doing medication-based weight loss, right?
Yes.
And
Yep.
you would track the medications you used as part
Oh,
of
yeah.
the, if, in
Yep.
case there's some, you know, I mean,
We
Cymbalta is
track
not great for
that.
weight loss, but it
Yep.
does help back pain. So I don't.
We actually have to track that on,
Okay.
because we're MSA QUIP or whatever, certified through the bariatric surgeon group certification. We track it on every single patient that goes through our clinic.
Okay, yeah, just if naltrexone works better than for back pain or whatever, I'd just be curious to start a bigger drug related study if you find that. So, okay.
Well, this has been wonderful. I've been trying to do my best to document all this robust discussion. We still have a couple of more minutes for any additional questions or feedback if there are any, but also keep in mind that this session is being recorded. We will have that streamlined and edited for everyone. They can use that as a reference point at any time. And then again, we're happy to connect people to continue the discussion if we feel that we've asked all of our questions for the day. Last chance.
I like that zip code analysis.
Yes, I'm glad you saw that. I was just about to mention that from the chat. Perfect.
Yeah, and we'll come back to the group since we're early. I'd rather work with the PBRN from the front end. So we'll come back to the group as we lay this out more. And make sure that y'all are involved as we think through it.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Okay, well, thank you everyone for joining us today. The discussion, the valuable feedback that you've provided both of our presenters and questions. Keep them coming. Contact me directly or once the recap goes out, including PowerPoint slides and the individual notes that have been taken to kind of summarize those important points that they've made. You can go ahead and contact presenters as you wish as well. So again, a big thank you to Dr. Muhammad Alam and Dr. Tria Haggerty. We'll go ahead and we'll wrap the session up, get you a couple minutes back on your Friday, and don't work too hard. You can end before 5 o'clock today. I'll give you permission. So thank you everyone for your time and take care and have a great weekend.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.